In 1836, C.S. Rafinesque published in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a work called The American Nations, in which he gives the historical songs or chants of the Lenape or Delaware Indians, the tribe that originally dwelt along the Delaware River. After describing a time when there was nothing but seawater on top of the land and the creation of sun, moon, stars, earth, and man, the legend depicts the golden age and the fall in these words: all were willingly pleased, all were easy thinking, all were well happified. But after a while a snake priest, Powako, brings on earth secretly the snake worship, Inetako, of the god of the snakes, Wakan. And there came wickedness, crime, and unhappiness. And bad weather was coming, distemper was coming, with death was coming. All this happened very long ago at the first land, Netamaki, beyond the great ocean, Kitahikahu. Then follows the Song of the Flood. There was long ago a powerful snake, Maskanako, when the men had become bad beings, Makowini. This strong snake had become the foe of the jinns, and they became troubled, hating each other. Both were fighting, both were spoiling, both were never peaceful. And they were fighting, least man Matapawi with dead keeper Nikhaulowit, and the strong snake readily resolved to destroy or fight the beings, or the men. The dark snake he brought, the monster, Ananyam, he brought, snake rushing water he brought. Much water is rushing, much go to hills, much penetrate, much destroying. Meanwhile, at Tula, this is the same Tula referred to in the Central American legends, at that island, Nanabush, the great hare Nana, became the ancestor of beings and men. Being born creeping, he is ready to move and dwell at Tula. The beings and men all go forth from the flood, creeping in shallow water or swimming afloat, asking which is the way to the turtle back, Tulapin. But there are many monsters in the way, and some men are devoured by them. But the daughter of a spirit helped them in a boat, saying, "Come, come." They were coming and were helped. The name of the boat or raft was Mokol. The water running off, it is drying in the plains and the mountains at the path of the cave. Elsewhere went the powerful action or motion. Then follows song number 3, describing the condition of mankind after the flood. Like the Aryans, they moved into a cold country. It freezes was there, it snows was there, it is cold was there. They moved to a milder region to hunt cattle. They divided their forces into tillers and hunters. The good and the holy were the hunters. They were spread themselves north, south, east, and west. Meantime, all the snakes were afraid in their huts, and the snake priest, Nakopawa, said to all, "Let us go." Eastwardly they go forth at Snakeland, Akokink, and they went away, earnestly grieving. Afterward, the fathers of the Delawares, who were always boating and navigating, find that the snake people have taken possession of a fine country, and they collect together the people from north, south, east, and west, and attempt to pass over the waters of the frozen sea to possess that land. They seem to travel in the dark of an Arctic winter until they come to a gap of open sea. They can go no farther, but some tarry at Furland, while the rest return to where they started from, the old Turtle Land. Here we find that the land that was destroyed was the first land, that it was an island beyond the great ocean. In all early age the people were happy and peaceful. They became wicked. Snake worship was introduced and was associated, as in Genesis, with the fall of man. Nanabush became the ancestor of the new race. His name reminds us of the Toltec Nata and the Hebrew Noah. After the flood came a dispersing of the people and a separation into hunters and tillers of the soil. Among the Mandan Indians, we not only find flood legends, but more remarkable still, we find an image of the ark, preserved from generation to generation, and a religious ceremony performed which refers plainly to the destruction of Atlantis, and to the arrival of one of those who escaped from the flood, bringing the dreadful tidings of the disaster. It must be remembered, as we will show hereafter, that many of these Mandan Indians were white men, with hazel, gray, and blue eyes, and all shades of color of the hair, from black to pure white; that they dwelt in houses in fortified towns, and manufactured earthenware pots in which they could boil water, an art unknown to the ordinary Indians, who boiled water by putting heated stones into it. I quote the very interesting account of George Catlin, who visited the Mandans nearly 50 years ago, lately republished in London in the North American Indians, a very curious and valuable work. He says in Volume 1, page 88, "In the center of the village is an open space, or public square, 150 feet in diameter and circular in form, which is used for all public games and festivals, shows, and exhibitions. The lodges around this open space front in with their doors toward the center, and in the middle of this stands an object of great religious veneration, on account of the importance it has in connection with the annual religious ceremonies. This object is in the form of a large hogshead, some 8 or 10 feet high, made of planks and hoops, containing within it some of their choicest mysteries or medicines. They call it the Big Canoe. This is a representation of the Ark. The ancient Jews venerated a similar image, and some of the ancient Greek states followed in processions a model of the Ark of Deucalion. But it is indeed surprising to find this practice perpetuated, even to our own times, by a race of Indians in the heart of America." On page 158 of the first volume of the same work, Catlin describes the great annual mysteries and religious ceremonials, of which this image of the Ark was the center. He says, "On the day set apart for the commencement of the ceremonies, a solitary figure is seen approaching the village. During the deafening din and confusion within the pickets of the village, the figure discovered on the prairie continued to approach with a dignified step, and in a right line toward the village. All eyes were upon him, and he at length made his appearance within the pickets, and proceeded toward the center of the village, where all the chiefs and braves stood ready to receive him, which they did in a cordial manner, by shaking hands, recognizing him as an old acquaintance, and pronouncing his name, Nu Mok Muk Ana, the first or only man. The body of this strange personage, which was chiefly naked, was painted with white clay, so as to resemble at a distance a white man. He enters the medicine lodge and goes through certain mysterious ceremonies. During the whole of this day, Nu Mok Muk Ana, the first or only man, traveled through the village, stopping in front of each man's lodge, and crying until the owner of the lodge came out and asked who he was and what was the matter, to which he replied by narrating the sad catastrophe which had happened on the earth's surface by the overflowing of the waters, saying that he was the only person saved from the universal calamity, that he landed his big canoe on a high mountain in the west, where he now resides, that he has come to open the medicine lodge, which must needs receive a present of an edged tool from the owner of every wigwam, that it may be sacrificed to the water. For, he says, if this is not done, there will be another flood, and no one will be saved, as it was with such tools that the big canoe was made." Having visited every lodge in the village during the day, and having received such a present from each, as a hatchet, a knife, etc., which is undoubtedly always prepared ready for the occasion, he places them in the medicine lodge, and, on the last day of the ceremony, they are thrown into a deep place in the river, sacrificed to the spirit of the waters. Among the sacred articles kept in the great medicine lodge are 4 sacks of water, called iti ka, sewed together, each of them in the form of a tortoise lying on its back, with a bunch of eagle feathers attached to its tail. These 4 tortoises, they told me, contained the waters from the 4 quarters of the world, that those waters had been contained therein ever since the settling down of the waters. "I did not," says Catlin, who knew nothing of an Atlantis theory, "think it best to advance anything against such a ridiculous belief." Catlin tried to purchase one of these water sacks, but could not obtain it for any price. He was told they were a society property. He then describes a dance by 12 men around the ark. They arrange themselves according to the 4 cardinal points. 2 are painted perfectly black, 2 are vermilion color, some were painted partially white. They dance a dance called Belloc na Pi, with horns on their heads, like those used in Europe as symbolical of Bel or Baal. Could anything be more evident than the connection of these ceremonies with the destruction of Atlantis? Here we have the image of the ark. Here we have a white man coming with the news that the waters had overflowed the land, and that all the people were destroyed except himself. Here we have the sacrifice to appease the spirit that caused the flood, just as we find the flood terminating in the Hebrew, Chaldean, and Central American legends, with a sacrifice. Here, too, we have the image of the tortoise, which we find in other flood legends of the Indians, and which is a very natural symbol for an island. As one of our own poets has expressed it, "Very fair and full of promise lay the island of St. Thomas, like a great green turtle slumbered on the sea which it encumbered." Here we have, too, the 4 quarters of Atlantis, divided by its 4 rivers, as we shall see a little farther on, represented in a dance, where the dancers arrange themselves according to the 4 cardinal points of the compass. The dancers are painted to represent the black and red races, while the first and only man represents the white race, and the name of the dance is a reminiscence of Baal, the ancient god of the races derived from Atlantis. But this is not all. The Mandans were evidently of the race of Atlantis. They have another singular legend, which we find in the account of Lewis and Clark. Their belief in a future state is connected with this theory of their origin. The whole nation resided in one large village, underground, near a subterranean lake. A grapevine extended its roots down to their habitation, and gave them a view of the light. Some of the most adventurous climbed up the vine, and were delighted with the sight of the earth, which they found covered with buffalo, and rich with every kind of fruit. Returning with the grapes they had gathered, their countrymen were so pleased with the taste of them, that the whole nation resolved to leave their dull residence for the charms of the upper region. Men, women, and children ascended by means of the vine, but when about half the nation had reached the surface of the earth, a corpulent woman, who was clambering up the vine, broke it with her weight, and closed upon herself and the rest of the nation the light of the sun. This curious tradition means that the present nation dwelt in a large settlement underground, that is, beyond the land, in the sea being represented by the subterranean lake. At one time the people had free intercourse between this large village and the American continent, and they found extensive colonies on this continent, whereupon some mishap cut them off from the mother country. This explanation is confirmed by the fact that the legend of the Iowa Indians, who were a branch of the Dakotas or Sioux Indians, and relatives of the Mandans, according to Major James W. Lynn, all the tribes of Indians were formerly one, and all dwelt together on an island, or at least across a large water toward the east or sunrise. They crossed this water in skin canoes or by swimming, but they know not how long they were in crossing, or whether the water was salt or fresh. While the Dakotas, according to Major Lind, who lived among them for 9 years, possessed legends of huge skiffs in which the Dakotas of old floated for weeks, finally gaining dry land, a reminiscence of ships and long sea voyages. The Mandans celebrated their great religious festival above described in the season when the willow is first in leaf, and a dove is mixed up in the ceremonies. And they further relate a legend that the world was once a great tortoise born on the waters and covered with earth, and that when one day, in digging the soil, a tribe of white men, who had made holes in the earth to a great depth, digging for badgers, at length pierced the shell of the tortoise. It sank, and the water covering it drowned all men with the exception of one, who saved himself in a boat, and when the earth re-emerged, sent out a dove, who returned with a branch of willow in its beak. The holes dug to find badgers were a savage's recollection of mining operations, and when the great disaster came and the island sunk in the sea amid volcanic convulsions, doubtless men said it was due to the deep mines which had opened the way to the central fires. But the recurrence of white men as the miners, and of a white man as the last and only man, and the presence of white blood in the veins of the people, all point to the same conclusion, that the Mandans were colonists from Atlantis. And here I might add that Catlin found the following singular resemblances between the Mandan tongue and the Welsh.
English, I. Mandan, me. Welsh, me. Pronounced, me. English, you. Mandan, ne. Welsh, hui. Pronounced, hue. English, he. Mandan, e. Welsh, a. Pronounced, a. English, she. Mandan, ea. Welsh, e. Pronounced, a. English, it. Mandan, aunt. Welsh, huint. Pronounced, huint. English, we. Mandan, nu. Welsh, ni. Pronounced, ne. English, they. Mandan, eona. Welsh, hona. Feminine. Pronounced, hona. English, no, or there is not. Mandan, megosh. Welsh, nagois. Pronounced, nagosh. English, no. Welsh, na. English, head. Mandan, pan. Welsh, pen. Pronounced, pan. English, the Great Spirit. Mandan, mahopeneta. Welsh, maur penaethir. Pronounced, mosur penaether.
Major Lind also found the following resemblances.
Comparison of Dakota or Sioux with other languages. Latin, blank. English, see, seen. Saxon, seon. Sanskrit, blank. German, sehen. Danish, siegt. Sioux, sin. Other languages, blank. Primary signification, appearing, visible. Latin, pinso. English, pound. Saxon, punian. Sanskrit, blank. German, blank. Danish, blank. Sioux, pow. Other languages, w. Welsh, poinian. Primary signification, beating. Latin, wado. English, went, wend. Saxon, wenden. Sanskrit, blank. German, blank. Danish, blank. Sioux, winter. Other languages, blank. Primary signification, passage. Latin, blank. English, town. Saxon, tun. Sanskrit, blank. German, town. Danish, tun. Sioux, tonwe. Other languages, Gaelic, dun. Primary signification, blank. Latin, qui. English, who. Saxon, hua. Sanskrit, quas. German, wir. Danish, blank. Sioux, tuwe. Other languages, blank. Primary signification, blank. Latin, blank. English, weapon. Saxon, wepn. Sanskrit, blank. German, vapen. Danish, vapen. Sioux, wipe. Other languages, blank. Primary signification, Sioux diminutive, wipena. Latin, ego. English, I. Saxon, ich. Sanskrit, agam. German, ich. Danish, jeg. Sioux, mish. Other languages, blank. Primary signification, blank. Latin, cor. English, corre. Saxon, blank. Sanskrit, blank. German, blank. Danish, blank. Sioux, ko. Greek, kear. Primary signification, center, heart. Latin, blank. English, 8. Saxon, achter. Sanskrit, alte. German, acht. Danish, otte. Sioux, shaktogan. Other languages, Greek, okto. Primary signification, blank. Latin, kanna. English, cane. Saxon, blank. Sanskrit, blank. German, blank. Danish, blank. Sioux, can. Other languages, Hebrew, can. Welsh, cawn. Primary signification, reed, weed, wood. Latin, puck. English, pock. Saxon, puck. Sanskrit, blank. German, pucke. Danish, puckel. Sioux, pucka. Other languages: Dutch, poca. Primary signification: swelling. Latin blank, English with. Saxon with. Sanskrit blank, German wieder. Danish blank. Sioux wita. Other languages: Gothic, gewithan. Primary signification: blank. Latin blank, English doughty. Saxon dochtig. Sanskrit blank, German taugen. Danish digtig. Sioux dita ditaya. Other languages: blank. Primary signification: hot, brave, daring. Latin blank, English tight. Saxon tien. Sanskrit blank, German dicht. Danish digt. Sioux titan. Other languages: blank. Primary signification: strain. Latin tango. Ductus. English touch, take. Saxon teiken. Sanskrit blank, German tiken. Danish tekken. Sioux tan, htaka. Other languages: blank. Primary signification: touch, take. Latin blank, English child. Saxon child. Sanskrit blank, German kind. Danish kuld. Sioux kin. Other languages: blank. Primary signification: progeny. Latin blank, English work. Saxon werken. Sanskrit blank. German blank. Danish blank. Sioux wokas. Hekon. Other languages: Dutch werk. Spanish hecho. Primary signification: labor, motion. Latin blank, English shackle. Saxon shokul. Sanskrit blank, German blank, Danish blank. Sioux shka. Other languages: Aramaic shakala. Dutch shakel. Teton. Shakalan. Primary signification: to bind, a link. Latin blank, English query. Sanskrit blank, German blank, Danish blank. Sioux quiva. Other languages: blank. Primary signification: blank. Latin blank, English shabby. Sanskrit blank, German shabig, Danish shabig. Sioux shabia. Other languages: blank. Primary signification: blank.
According to Major Lind, the Dakotas, or Sioux, belong to the same race as the Mandans, hence the interest which attaches to these verbal similarities. Among the Iroquois there is a tradition that the sea and waters infringed upon the land, so that all human life was destroyed. The Chickasaws assert that the world was once destroyed by water, but that one family was saved and 2 animals of every kind. The Sioux say there was a time when there was no dry land, and all men had disappeared from existence. See Lynd's Manuscript History of the Dakotas, Library of Historical Society of Minnesota. The Okanagus have a god, Skyape, and also one called Cha-Cha, who appear to be endowed with omniscience, but their principal divinity is their great mythical ruler and heroine, Skomolt. Long ago, when the sun was no bigger than a star, this strong medicine woman ruled over what appeared to have now become a lost island. At last the peace of the island was destroyed by war, and the noise of battle was heard, with which Skomolt was exceeding wroth, whereupon she rose up in her might and drove her rebellious subjects to one end of the island, and broke off the piece of land on which they were huddled, and pushed it out to sea, to drift whither it would. This floating island was tossed to and fro and buffeted by the winds, till all but 2 died. A man and a woman escaped in a canoe, and arrived on the mainland, and from there the Okanagus are descended. This from Bancroft's Native Races, Volume 3, page 149. Here we have the flood legend clearly connected with a lost island. The Nicaraguans believed that ages ago the world was destroyed by a flood in which the most part of mankind perished. Afterward, the Teotes, or gods, restored the earth as at the beginning. That from page 75 of Bancroft's Native Races. The wild Apaches, wild from their natal hour, have a legend that the first days of the world were happy and peaceful days. Then came a great flood from which Montezuma and the Coyote alone escaped. Montezuma became then very wicked, and attempted to build a house that would reach to heaven, but the Great Spirit destroyed it with thunderbolts. Again, Bancroft, Volume 3, page 76. The Pimas, an Indian tribe allied to the Papagos, have a peculiar flood legend. The son of the Creator was called Zukka, possibly Zeus. An eagle prophesied the deluge to the prophet of the people 3 times in succession, but his warning was despised. Then, in the twinkling of an eye, there came a peal of thunder and an awful crash, and a green mound of water reared itself over the plain. It seemed to stand upright for a second, then, cut incessantly by the lightning, goaded on like a great beast, it flung itself upon the prophet's hut. When the morning broke, there was nothing to be seen alive but one man, if indeed he were a man. Zukka, the son of the Creator, had saved himself by floating on a ball of gum or resin. This instantaneous catastrophe reminds one forcibly of the destruction of Atlantis. Zukka killed the eagle, restored its victims to life, and repeopled the earth with them, as Deucalion repeopled the earth with the stones.